Welcome, welcome, welcome to the first installment of Behind Enemy Lines. My name is Brandon Drum. I'm here with Josh Henschke from Michigan's On Threes Maize Blue Review. He's the publisher there. Um, this is going to be fun because it's OU Michigan, Blue Bloods, the winningest program in college football history versus I think like the third or fourth winningest program in college football history. Michigan being the winningest, OU third or fourth. You're talking Heisman winners. You're talking national championships. This is what college football is all about, and we're going to get you behind enemy lines on both sides as we kind of the meeting of the minds here, talking the big game this coming weekend on September 6th. Josh, appreciate you joining me, man. This is going to be a fun one. I just want to know, like, what is the vibe in Michigan over this game? Is it something that's been talked about all off season?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people kind of view this matchup as kind of like a inflection point, an early inflection point of the season. It's really going to for Michigan specifically. It's really kind of going to determine what kind of like the vibe is going to be coming out of the year. I mean, it was already high with the way the season ended last year with back to back wins against Ohio State and Alabama, and then you add in Bryce Underwood's addition.
Yeah.
And now you're like, okay, well, Sharon Moore's got the pieces that he's been wanting that they didn't have last year. And now, we've got a big time matchup in week 2, an early season deal here that's going to really determine, if your expectations need to be adjusted in the better or for the worse. So, yeah, I mean, the mood is insanely high right now heading into this one. I mean, it's a big game, and this one's really going to determine, at least during the early stages of the season, whether Michigan is ready to compete, and not just at a conference level, but nationally as well with a guy like Bryce Underwood under center.
Yeah, I think just for the Oklahoma side, for the Michigan listeners, I know that we're going to have both watching this, obviously. Yeah, this is make or break. I don't want to say make or break for Brent Venables, but it's a
Mhm.
very, very um, pivotal, I think
Yeah,
is the right word for him, probably in his career. This is the biggest game for Oklahoma. And I don't know how long, just because of what it means. If Oklahoma can go in and beat Michigan, and yes, this isn't the Michigan of 2022, the national
yeah,
champs, like any of that, but it's still Michigan, right?
yeah.
It's still that program of they are, and I believe it was it 23 they won the national championship, not 22, right?
23,
Yeah, 23.
23.
I said 22, 23. 22 is when they played TCU. There's actually a defensive
Yeah,
lineman that we'll get to on Oklahoma's team that played against them at TCU and Dominic Williams. But yeah, this it's the biggest game for Oklahoma for just so many reasons. I think you look back at last year's Tennessee game, first SEC game, and it was big just because of the optics. First SEC game for the University of Oklahoma. They're playing Tennessee. Josh Heupel,
yeah,
the prodigal sons coming back to Norman, all that type of stuff. But this kind of has that same feel, right? Sharon Moore,
yeah,
another
yeah.
big time player who played in some of the best teams in Oklahoma history, um, is a beloved alumni of the University of Oklahoma, coming back as the head coach of Michigan. There's just so many things that makes this game huge, and then you add the kind of side stories of Bryce Underwood and him being kind of the ballyhooed freshman, and
Mhm.
John Mateer being the top transfer portal quarterback, and they're going to butt heads and go up against
Yeah,
each other in this game of blue bloods. The stories are just written there for it. So there's like low hanging fruit for everybody, man.
yeah,
For
exactly.
every writer, for every journalist, this is what it's all made of. And then you got game day. I
Mhm.
mean, it's everything that you want more about college football, in my opinion. And this is what it's about. As
Right.
far as Underwood, man, I got to ask, talking off air, and you said the stat line is deceiving.
Mhm.
He looks so much better just in how he played, the poise that he had. Can you kind of put that and expound upon that so that the listener, the watcher is can kind of understand what you're talking about? They didn't get to see the Michigan game.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about a kid who just turned 18 like a week or so ago. I mean, it was in, the last month. So, the general, consensus is like, okay, what is this kid going to look like when the lights are 10 times brighter than they ever were with local Belleville, which is like 25-30 minutes away from Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
Uh, it just the poise that he looked in the pocket, and again, it's so much different from what Michigan had last year. So like it's almost like he's walking into a situation where it's just he's going to look better by default because Michigan's quarterback play last year was so just bad, flat out bad. I mean, Michigan's offense was horrible last year. So, you have to look at it that way, that, Michigan is improving at quarterback almost by default because he's just so much better than what they had. But, you look at him in, pregame, the kid's just soaking it all in. He's rocking his head back and forth to the music. He's getting pumped up. Um, and really Sharon Moore has kind of nailed it all week, that like the kid, he's just so even keeled, off the field and on the field. He doesn't panic, he doesn't have that. And granted, they played New Mexico, and all things considered, it's going to be the big test this week when
Yeah.
they face a much, better defense. But there was no panic when he was being pressured. He seemingly made almost all the right decisions, played turnover free football. Just the look of the kid, he did not look like a kid that was just turned 18 and just fresh out of high school. Or, well, in his case, he came in December, but just a kid,
Yeah.
he's just a kid. All of this hype surrounding him, and all this talk about, NIL and whatever. I mean, the kid's he's 18 and doesn't look like that, doesn't act that way. So, I mean, so far through 1 week, it's definitely translated to how he conducts himself in the offense, and I'll be curious to see how much of the workload that Chip Lindsey wants to kind of put on his shoulders, in terms of kind of whether you want to stick with the kind of a vanilla-ish playbook this week,
Yeah.
or you want to kind of open things up a little bit. And I certainly think he's capable of handling those responsibilities too. So I hate the phrase, like I hate using the phrase, the kid is built different, but I mean, it's just in Bryce's case, it's just true. I mean, you've been in this business, a while, you see kids come and go. In terms of him and like JJ McCarthy, you kind of like, all right, these kids are just different. There's something
Yeah.
about them that's just different. And you feel that way about Bryce when you look at him.
You brought up JJ McCarthy, obviously Minnesota Vikings first round pick, was a really national champ.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what about when you see JJ McCarthy as a freshman, Bryce Underwood as a freshman? Like, can you kind of quantify the comparison of what you see there and what makes Bryce Underwood kind of the next heir apparent to JJ
Yeah.
McCarthy?
Yeah. I think Bryce arguably had way more hype than JJ did, at this point of his freshman year,
Hmm.
just because JJ at the time was splitting reps with Cade McNamara. So, and they were kind of almost easing him into his role a little bit. I mean, he played spot bits here and there, had a really nice opening game, for his true freshman season. But I think in the case of Underwood, they're kind of just like, have at it, kid. Like, the reins are completely off, and he's really taking control of this team. And a lot of the players have mentioned just his leadership abilities, for being just a young kid, are really good. And the team really responds and resonates to when he talks. So I think from a leadership standpoint, he has a lot of the same qualities that JJ had while at Michigan, and still does, at the next level. And just his ability to be prepared, I think, has really been next level. You hear all the time how he's always in the film room, digesting film of whatever he can look at. I've been told on numerous occasions he's had to be physically removed from Schembechler Hall so people can go home because he's been there for so long. It's just that kind of mentality where it's like, all right, you're on that elite path that someone not too long ago was on you. So I don't know if I don't think I can compare their games to one another. I think they are kind of similar, but you look at Underwood. I mean, he's first of all, he's bigger than McCarthy is. I mean, he's just a big dude for a quarterback. And both are mobile. Both can create something out of nothing. So there are similarities, but especially when it comes to mindset, we'll just kind of have to see how he develops on the field and what that looks like. But
Yeah,
the JJ comparisons, whether they're fair or unfair, a lot of it has to do with recency bias too. But
for sure.
it's there and it makes a lot of sense.
So I don't know about you all, or what you see in Oklahoma, but I have to ask, like, is there, I don't want to say fear, because I think that's a wrong way to put it.
Yeah.
Is there kind of trepidation about, or within the Michigan contingent, maybe even somewhat sources that you talk to that, holy crap, like this Oklahoma defense is you know, as poised as Bryce Underwood is, he's
Yeah.
still going up against a Brent Venables defense that
Yeah.
could be going to throw some crazy crap at him. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, I think yeah, that's definitely a legitimate concern. I mean, yeah, I mean, it might not be, Oklahoma's defense last year might not have been like up to standard to Brent Venables or whatever, but yeah, I mean, there's going to be some unique looks. There's going to be exotic looks that are going to get thrown at Underwood, and that he's going to have to be able to digest on the fly. I think that's something that New Mexico coach Jason X said after the game is that we tried to throw so many different looks at him and try to confuse him, but he just couldn't get rattled. So I think that's a good first step for someone that you don't necessarily have a ton of tape on. I mean, all you can do is look at high school tape. Now you've obviously got one game of tape to look at, but yeah, I think anytime you're walking into an environment like Norman and you face a defensive guy like Brent Venables, I think there's absolutely a concern that not just for Bryce, but the offensive line too, to not get rattled and not be thrown off your game. And so far Bryce has passed the test, but again, you have to kind of keep your expectations kind of at the same spot because it's New Mexico and not Oklahoma. I mean, I think this week is going to be pretty telling, or at least a good first step in terms of how this thing is going to go. Is if do they have what it takes to be a national contender, and or is there room to grow, and they've got a long way to go. And I guess both can be true at the same time, but I think you'd feel a lot better coming out of there with a win than and when a win with things to improve on than a loss and say, wow, we've got a long way to go. So yeah, I don't think, as you mentioned, I don't think there's like a fear, as you said, is the right word, but definitely a concern
Yeah.
about what type of things are going to be thrown at him. But if that mindset from week one continues in the week two, it's going to be very hard to throw Underwood off his game. But again, you got to keep in mind that the quality of opponent from week one to week two is vastly, vastly different. Really, you're kind of thinking of it like it's like the season starts now, and you kind of went through not to diminish what New Mexico did because they made it a game, but it's almost like you're looking at it as like a preseason game warm up, and now the season starts now. Like this is the preparation that you've been preparing for all summer, probably before that, and this is what you've been preparing and waiting for is this moment on Saturday coming up.
So the same side of the field, obviously, I know Justice just because I covered him in high
Mhm.
school. Um, Oklahoma was in on him fairly high for a little bit before, the whole thing shut down and he went to Bama,
Mhm.
transfers to Michigan. I think he went off for 150 plus.
Yeah.
Just off the top of my head, I'm
Mhm.
looking 150 plus on Saturday. He had 2 touchdowns, right? Two,
3.
three.
He
I,
outscored Alabama.
I, wow, wow. Shot fired. All right. No, I respect it. But what is what is Oklahoma facing in a running back like him? And in that same token, the offensive line for Michigan, is it the similar to the one they had in 23, or is it 22 version? Like where would you put all this?
Yeah, that's a good question about the O line. I'm not really sure where they rank up yet. I don't think the offensive line play from they have a lot of familiar faces coming back from the last group, but they are in different spots on the line. Would I say the offensive line was elite last year? No, but it was good enough to win big games when it needed to. Against likes of Ohio State and Bama in the bowl game. Do I think it's Joe Moore award level right now? No.
Yeah.
I think the 23 group. I don't know if I'm ever going to see a group like that again. Just from you're talking so many fifth, 6 year guys coming back with so much experience. I mean, 30 plus games up and down the line, plus guys that can be rotated in who have had experience. I just don't know if you're ever going to see that again with the way NIL and the transfer portal works right now. I just don't know if that's even possible. But that was just a unique group of talent, experience that just kind of culminated into the perfect storm of what the 2023 season was. And so looking ahead, I mean, I think they have a chance to be pretty good. I don't know if they can be elite, and I don't know if they have to be elite. They've got, for example, an Evan Link played right tackle last year, now plays left tackle in place of Andrew Sprague, who was a highly touted freshman last year, who's now getting some run, and they're excited about him. Gio Ahadi was part of the 2023 group that had some playing time, as kind of taken his game to the next step, playing at guard. Greg Crippen's another guy on the 23 line that has seen some time as playing at center. So the idea, the mindset is still there. Sharon Moore's hands have been on this group for a long time. Hiring a guy like Chip Lindsey, so where he can be less hands on with the offense and have a guy he can trust, so that way he can focus on getting the offensive line back to where it was. That was his big thing. This offseason was kind of being more involved in the offensive line because there was a considerable drop off from one unit to the next when he wasn't as involved compared to when he was. And that's not
Yeah.
that's not a shot at Grant Newsom, who's the current O-line coach or anything like that. It's just when you go from that group at 23 to basically replacing the entire line, you're gonna have drop off. It's just gonna happen. So
Yeah.
he's addressed some needs there by adding Juan Castillo. He was an assistant coach for a long time, and he's now an analyst there. That's been helping out Grant Newsom, longtime NFL coach that now is back at Michigan for a previous stint in Ann Arbor. So they're excited about having him back. But yeah, as far as that entire group as a whole, they were equally as responsible for helping Justice Haynes have his day that he had on Saturday than as physically that Haynes was too. So Michigan's got a unique running back room because they've kind of got two running backs that they view as kind of 1A, 1B heading into the game. I think Haynes with his 150 yards, 3 touchdowns were clearly, they don't want to call him the lead back, but I mean, they go with what they call the hot hand.
Yeah.
So Haynes had the hot hand compared to Jordan Marshall last game, but it could be either guy. One day, like one game, one guy could break out, the next game, the next. So they've got some depth at running back that they like a lot outside of those two as well. So, but as far as Haynes has proven, at least through 1 week, that he's the guy. I mean, he's kind of got a unique skill set, and same with Marshall, where they're both kind of similar backs, but Marshall is kind of more of that in between the tackles kind of guy that embraces the contact. And not to say that Haynes isn't, but he's more of your bounce outside home run hitter type of guy, and he proved that on Saturday. So, yeah, I mean, he's unique, and that entire room is unique, and they've got some freshmen they're excited about, some younger guys they're excited about too, that I don't know how much run they're going to get against Oklahoma, but yeah, I mean, that ground attack starts with both Haynes and Marshall, and I expect them to get plenty of run on Saturday.
If you were to tell an Oklahoma fan the one person to watch, Sands,
Yeah.
Haynes, and Underwood, who's the one person they need to watch for on the Michigan offense that could cause a problem for Oklahoma?
I think Donovan McCulley, wide receiver, he's been talked about a ton this offseason. Earned the number 1 jersey, which is a big deal in Michigan circle because it was worn by the likes of, Braylon Edwards and David Terrell and all that stuff. So it's kind of a big deal to wear that number. And he, walks into the program this
My
offseason.
childhood man. That's my
Yeah.
childhood man.
Yeah,
I want Michigan fans that are watching this to understand this real quick before you finish your
of course. Absolutely.
Florida and Michigan, like outside of Oklahoma, was like everything to me. Like Tim Biakabatuka
Oh, man. Yeah.
was a dude. There was a guy from Edmond, Oklahoma, back in the early mid '90s, named Shea Foster,
Mm-hmm.
that played for Michigan, and I was obsessed. I lived in Edmond, Oklahoma at the time. He ran for Edmond Memorial. When he went to Michigan, my heart was broken, but I made sure I watched him and Tim Biakabatuka as much because they were in the same backfield, if I remember correctly. And it was just, I don't know. I just became infatuated with everything with Michigan because when I watched them play, I always was like, they throw the ball. It looks pretty when they throw the ball. When they run the ball, it looks pretty. There's something about watching them that looked pretty and different than what I watched with Oklahoma. Now, granted, that was Oklahoma's downtime,
Mm-hmm.
but and I'm sorry for interrupting, but like that was like such a huge, the number one thing that you brought up, just like flashback of wide receivers that I grew up just.
Yeah.
I played wide receiver. I idolized a lot of those guys growing up, man. They were just
Braylon
great.
Edwards. Now that's a special dude at
Yep.
Michigan. That guy, man, they just kept pumping out receivers, and it kind of it's stopped a little bit.
Them
They
and the
haven't
team
had
north,
that.
or it's team to the south to y'all. Excuse me.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people feel like, now bringing it back to McCulley, a lot of people feel like he could be that guy.
Hmm.
Michigan hasn't had a 1,000-yard receiver since Jeremy Gallen, and that
He
was
was a
in
transfer, right? McCauley was a transfer.
McCulley. Yeah, Indiana transfer.
Mhm.
Yeah, Jeremy Gallen played for Michigan back during the Brady Hoke years, so that kind of tells you
Wow.
where things are in terms of the receiving. It's just Michigan has been so run heavy, and granted, it's worked, but they've had so many good wide receivers come and go since that time that haven't really been
People's Jones.
utilized, yeah, as they should, and they feel like they've got a guy like that in McCulley, and um, didn't have as much of an impact on Saturday as many had hoped. But I mean, you're talking about a dude that a former quarterback that converted into wide receiver, transferred from Indiana last year, this year, into the program, and you're talking about a 6'7" dude that just towers over everybody. And that's kind of one thing where Michigan is struggled with in the past, is kind of that deep threat guy. And again, I mean, it's they've been able to handle it without a kind of a deep threat, but you add his size and athleticism. He definitely, I mean, he's going to be a tough cover for any defensive back, just height alone. I mean, he's huge, the big dude. And so I think he's, you brought a guy like him in for big moments and big games like this. And to have him have a big game on Saturday, I think that's huge for an offense that is really looking to kind of wipe away what they had last year, which is like just ineptitude on offense, like just from all angles.
OU fans can relate. They can
Michigan and
relate.
Oklahoma are very similar in that regards in terms of like where that kind of things kind of sit right now in terms
Yeah.
of like two big name quarterbacks that are kind of looking to take the next step in the national conversation and funnily enough these two teams are meeting at the same time to kind of really determine who's going to get that leg up. So yeah, they're very similar in that regard in terms of narratives from one year to the next and trying to build on the discussion, the
Yeah.
conversation surrounding their ascent.
So on the opposite side, there's a little bit of drama on the opposite side of the ball right now for you guys. Another player out of, I believe, St. Francis Academy in Baltimore. I got to know him a little bit, Jay Sean Barham,
Yep.
back in the day.
Yep.
Jamar Kane, who was a defensive end coach at Oklahoma at the time, whenever he was coming out. And Barham went to LSU, obviously out of high school, right? If I remember that correctly.
Maryland.
Maryland,
Maryland.
excuse me, Maryland. Yeah, he stayed home in Maryland. I forgot who went to, somebody else from that area went out to LSU. I can't remember who it was, but yeah, he went to Maryland. Um, he was on the same team as Derek Moore, who I got to
Yep.
know really
Yep.
well. Both those guys obviously coming to Norman. They were both super high on Oklahoma. Like, as a matter of fact, Derek Moore was committed to Oklahoma for a long time.
Yeah.
Um, Weird deal there, but he's coming in with Jay Sean Barham, who I got to say, even as somebody that, you from an Oklahoma side, Oklahoma is like, oh, yeah, that was targeting. That's targeting. Sure, it was targeting. Keep
Yeah.
back, keep back, keep back, targeting. Truth be told, yeah, that was super questionable because it looked like he got in face mask and the dude, but I am a quarterback dad, so I will say that protecting he is in a very vulnerable position, but that should have been probably just roughing the passer or a personal
Yeah.
foul of some sort, driving the quarterback in the
Mhm.
ground. The targeting thing I thought was a little much. I don't know how much the appeal is going to work. It's probably not
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
but how big of a loss is that for Michigan? Like, put that in perspective. They still have Derek Moore, but like,
Yeah.
that's a big loss, right?
Yeah. I would say it would have been bigger last season.
Okay.
I think Michigan is in a really fortunate spot to have a really good linebacker room right now.
Okay.
That's probably one of their strengths outside of the defensive line of right now. It's their deep. Ernest Hausman is there. Nebraska transfer. Has been with the program a couple of years, and he's a mainstay, an anchor at linebacker. And to be clear, I mean, it is not having Barham from a half is a loss, absolutely. But they're confident that they can kind of substitute, for 2 quarters. They got two guys that they really like and played really, really well on Saturday. And Jimmy Rolder, who's been with the program, part of that national championship defense, has
Mm-hmm.
been consistently banged up through his career. So you haven't seen him at 100%. But right now, he's at 100%, and you can tell it's just his game's at a different level right now. A senior guy, experienced, and he's ready to step up and kind of fill in where he needs to fill in. And another guy that they're excited about is Cole Sullivan. He's a 4-star linebacker coming out of high school. He's a sophomore. No, is he a sophomore? Or is he a freshman? He's young. Either way, he's young and doesn't have much experience, but he's talent. I mean, he got all the talent in the world. Sherrone Moore has consistently said, like, man, this kid's got the goods to be really, really good. And he had a great game, had an interception last night, and just all around it just has a nose. It's one of those kids where like you see a tackle happen and Cole Sullivan stands up out of the dog pile. It's like he's just there. He's got that innate ability. So there was some talk that they didn't really know where to put, and it's very similar to Barham as well. They didn't really know where to put him. Is he an edge? Is he a pure edge guy? Is he a linebacker? He's built like an edge, but plays like a linebacker. So they felt, all right, well, let's kind of put him into the linebacker size. I mean, he's got frame to fill out if we feel like, edge is a better spot. but he's a guy where I could see him having a big game on Saturday with that extended amount of time. He is consistently that trajectory since spring has been he's a guy that could steal some reps from the older guys. Not necessarily take jobs because I think Barham and Houseman are relatively safe in terms of their spots on the depth chart. But he's a guy that could rapidly ascend and get and see plenty of time. And man, even another guy, Troy Bowles, has been had offseason surgery coming in when he transferred from Georgia. It was something that Michigan was aware about when they took
Wow,
him.
forgot about that.
Um,
Wow.
yeah, so he's a guy. I think he played like 13 snaps last night, but ended the game with a sack, and it was impressive. He just looked like a shot out of a cannon, and wasn't even touched to the quarterback. So he's another guy that is kind of slowly getting back into the swing of things that they like to ease in there. But um, I think for at least a half, they've got enough to absorb the loss of Barham. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I mean that's still a loss. And as you mentioned, I don't think the appeal is going to go anywhere. I mean, it is a bang bang play. I understand it from the point of a defenseless quarterback in a throwing motion. I'm just not sure what else he could really do at that point
No,
because
I
it's
agree. I agree.
not exactly like he led with the crown of his helmet, but that helmet, I mean, I understand and respect the fact that, they take helmet to helmet hits seriously and it's an issue. It's just, man, it's just such a snap decision that wasn't even called at the time because they were reviewing for a fumble. And then they're like, oh, by the way, this is, this
Yeah,
is a targeting. You're out of here. So it's like, it's tough. I mean, what can you do?
I just spitballing an idea here, and this is what I think should be the rule, much like the NFL, right? When they do the targeting thing, why not just make it a 15-yard penalty? You review it. They have a committee that reviews
Yeah. Yeah.
all call targeting plays after the game, and then they can throw down the punishment, whether it be in the NIL world a fine, and
Right.
or from your profit sharing,
Mhm.
or and I don't know how they could do that without a collective bargaining, but whatever. Or you just say, dude, you're missing a half because
Yeah.
we've reviewed it and this is what it is.
Mhm.
Like instead of bang bang, sorry, you're out, and you're by the way, you're missing this.
Yeah.
You have a review of everything that happens. That way it's not spur of the moment decision making right then and there. And I know they go and review it right after the play happens. But is that really enough time to sit down and decide a person's fate for the next week?
No.
I think that's just me.
No,
Maybe it's a
I
little too
think that's a
much.
great idea. That way you can actually have, however long like a committee meets for, it could be like a day, 12 hours
And it's
or
not
even
emotional either, right?
right, exactly. Yeah, so that way you're not, you can't take more than what, like 5 minutes during a game to review something to view intent unless it's blatantly obvious that, you intended to hurt someone, but yeah, but you can't really break down the film to look at like, oh, is he making a football play?
Yeah.
Did he decide to lead with the crown of his helmet? Yeah, you can't make those kind of snap decisions in the moment. And yeah, having some sort of like rules committee that can go back and look at these plays and retroactively punish or not punish, and at least give a decent explanation of why you're calling it this way,
Hmm.
instead of having, the network's referee analysts say, oh, this is why they called it, when they don't really know why they called it.
Yeah, they're not in the room.
It'd be good to have some sort of explanation. And that way, programs can use it and be like, all right, well, this is what we can teach these guys. Or they can appeal it that way and say, hey, look, like, okay, I know you said this, but this is what we have to show you. So yeah, I couldn't even begin to like quantify what the hit rate is on successful appeals. I know it's happened a couple of times, but I mean, they can appeal all they want. I just don't see like the Big Ten wanting to appeal that to the NCAA. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I'll eat
Yeah.
crow if I'm wrong, but it just is not a regular thing that happens. I just don't see it becoming like I just think they'll take the suspension and we'll see him in the second half.
Is this Michigan D line? is it interior or is it the edges that are the strength? Because I know they had a couple guys drafted, right? Are they still really, really good on the interior like they were last year, or is it more of a edge rushing that's going to be more of the pass rush havoc for their opponents this year?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. What they lack in star power, I guess, in not having the Mason Grahams and the Kenneth Grants on the line this year, they make up for it in depth. They added Damon Payne in the offseason in the interior from Alabama, Trey Williams from Clemson. They really think a guy like Rayshon Benny, who's been with the program a couple of years, is ready for that lead role. The next guy that they think can kind of work his way into a high ranked draft pick. But this team reminds like the defensive line reminds me a lot of what they had in 23 in terms of depth that they can rely on and can give guys breaks. They can rotate in and out. I think Michigan played like 32 guys on defense on Saturday, so it was quite a bit, and a lot of those were at nickel and on the defensive line up and down. They've got two guys that they can consistently roll out on both edge spots. We talked about Derek Moore. There's TJ Guy that they can rotate in. A young guy like Cam Brandt that they like to. It's a good mix of experienced guys and young guys that they're high on that they can rotate in. They say they have like 12 guys on the line that they can play throughout
Yeah.
the game. So the depth is there. They're kind of hoping that some guys take the next step. Like an Eno Etta is a guy that has been with the program for a while, but has just been stuck behind guys like pros to no fault of his own. So this is kind of the year where they kind of hope he can take a next step too. So I would say right now, one game into the year, the defensive line group, edges, nose tackles, and all of that is probably the strength of their defense just because of numbers alone right now. With linebacker probably being a close second, but that's kind of where their success or failure is going to start on Saturday. I mean, they have to make Mateer uncomfortable.
Yeah.
They can't afford to let him sling it all over the place on Saturday.
So, as far as the back end of the defense, who's the leader? Like, who's the best player that Oklahoma fans seem to be watching for? Is it Brandon Hillman? Is it TJ Guy? Like, who you got?
I mean, you can make a case for a couple of guys. I mean, Brandon Hillman is probably one of the more physical tacklers I've ever watched
He was like that in
play.
high school too. Yeah.
Oh man, he like yesterday he laid the lumber a couple of times where I'm like, oh, you got to be careful. You're gonna end up like Barham. He's just a heat seeker. I mean, he's physical, plays really hard. Zeke Berry is kind of looking to be that like lifeblood of the defensive backs too. The unique thing about that group is that they've got guys that can play multiple spots. We looked at the snap counts and stuff, and Michigan had 15 guys play at nickel, and that included defensive linemen playing at nickel on Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
which is crazy. I mean, like that's an insane number to have play at nickel. And so Barry, they kind of figured out in that last year that like, yeah, Barry can kind of play nickel, like, and that really like that was kind of the light switch moment for this defense. It really turned things around is when they shifted guys like Barry to like a nickel safety type of player. And he's very capable of playing both. That's kind of where they got their most success. And they've addressed depth there as well. They added TJ Metcalf from Arkansas, who they're extremely high about. They love that kid. Another guy can play multiple roles for the defensive back group and is playing at safety right now, but also can play corner. They love his leadership ability. And that's not even including Rod Moore too, who's been with the program, which feels like forever. I don't know if he's going to play on Saturday. Tore his ACL last year, was unable to go, and then had a second was on track to be a full go in camp, then had a second procedure just after spring that kind of set the timeline back a little bit. So, if he doesn't play this week, he's going to be very close. But he's another guy that they can throw out there that they like. But if you're talking about the top two right now where things stand, it's probably Hillman and Barry. Jair Hill at corner, they like a lot. I think their big question mark right now with that group is kind of where the corners kind of sit behind Jair Hill. He's pretty much cemented that number one role, and they're kind of looking for him to take that next step with Will Johnson no longer being there. So it's kind of the depth chart under that is it's very inexperienced and young. Got a couple of true freshmen that they played Saturday who acquitted themselves fairly well. But yeah, I mean this is going to be the big test. I mean if Oklahoma is going to beat Michigan, it's going to have to be through the air. I mean Mateer is going to have to beat him with his arm, and that's kind of the big question mark right now is can defensive backs not named Jair Hill, Brandon Hillman, Zeke Berry, can they step up and kind of limit a guy who's got a very lively arm and a very good arm? So that's kind of the main thing that I'm going to be looking at for sure.
Do you have any questions about Oklahoma that Michigan fans kind of want to know?
Yeah, the first two that kind of pop in my head is that I know Trevor McHugh, who writes for us. He looked at the depth chart that was posted last week, and he's like,
Yep.
what are they doing? Like, it was that
All the
was that
oars? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Was
Yeah.
like was that intentional, or are they
Yeah.
really trying to experiment with
No,
what they
no,
have?
they do that all the time. We always take a bet on the over under on the oars. And that was the same way with, we call him Mule Shoe. Lincoln Riley was the same thing. There was always a lot of oars because the battles are still ongoing. I think
Yeah,
the depth of this team far supersedes anything that I can remember under the Brent Venables era. And that even means 2023 because that 23 team, I'm not going to lie, the year you all won the national title,
mm-hmm.
um, they were a Danny Stutzman injury away from being the Big 12 champs and making the playoffs. And that team was really, really, they were really, really good.
Yeah,
Um, they just, they didn't have the depth that he was the leader. He was the unquestionable leader of that defense. When he went out, they didn't have it. Now, last year, that defense took another step because that was year two for Brent.
mm-hmm.
And last year's defense, that 2024 version, was insanely good.
Yeah,
OU had no business being in hardly any of the games that they were in because that offense was so. I don't. Did you ever look at the availability chart that Oklahoma had last year going into games? They would
no,
have up to 15 guys out or injured,
yeah,
starters
yeah,
or their backups, all out on offense, just out, 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 questionable, out, 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 out. It was in. Herb Street got on there. He's like, I've never seen anything like this.
yeah,
So that defense had to carry it, and still they were a few plays away from being an 8-9 win team, 10
yeah,
teams. Like that, it just it boggles your mind when you think about it. And of course they lost the Navy last year, but they rocked into that Navy game, I think with like 52 players. And you got to think how many of those are walk-ons. And they were
yeah,
playing walk-ons. It was the weirdest game ever because of the transfer portal and the fact that Oklahoma just basically told a bunch of dudes, bye. You
yeah,
got to go. Bye.
yeah,
You're not playing with us in this bowl game. Bye.
yeah,
And that's the way it ended up. And they ended up losing that game. The fact that they were winning that game kind of was astounding. You get some fans that'll sit there and go, it was still Navy drum. I'm like, well, that Navy team, how many did they win? I think they won 9 games, 10 games last year, something like that. I have to go back and
yeah,
look.
yeah, yeah.
They don't have any transfers and they all play together the whole season.
Mm-hmm.
There's no attrition there. If you're with Navy, you're with Navy. If you're with Army, you're with Army. And when they're good, they're really good. That's why,
Mm-hmm.
because they play together for 4 years and they're a team.
Yep.
Um, and I think people lose sight of that in the NIL era because they're not used to it anymore. But Michigan was probably the last team of the NIL for the like Power Four NIL eras where they came up and were like, they played together from freshman through senior year, and that's who they
Yeah, yeah,
and
yep,
they won the national title because of it.
yeah,
So,
absolutely,
and
absolutely.
that's why they were so powerfully constructed because they were a team. As
Mm-hmm.
Schembechler said, the team, the team, the team. And that's what it was for Michigan in 23. That's kind of how this team is a little bit. Like, obviously, you got Mateer.
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to have some transfers sprinkled in there, wide receiver, and even at running back a little bit. But that defense, that's all BV
Yeah.
outside of like two guys is Marvin Jones Jr. and I'm trying to think of who the other one might be. Is there another one that's a transfer? Oh, Dominic Williams.
Hmm.
Everybody else is Brent Venables, Brent Venables, Brent Venables. Even on the depth chart, it is literally BV recruited them, brought them in, and that's what they are. And it's starting to get a little bit more like that on the offensive side of the ball. So that's where the oars come from, is that they're so deep that there's a lot of this guy could start or this guy could start. It's how is that week going to shape out?
Hmm.
I'm interested to see how week 2 plays out. I'm imagining there's going to be far less oars
Yeah.
going into week 2. That's
Hmm.
just my guess.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I mean, and obviously part of that's gamesmanship too. I
Oh yeah, for sure.
try to be gamesmanship. I mean, I think the whole conversation about pregame depth charts is just silly because they never
Well,
are
Sharon's
accurate.
buddies with the whole OU staff.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Those are his
I know.
boys.
It's yeah, that's gonna be really interesting. The fact that they crafted a proposed suspension to the NCAA around this game so you could coach in it kind of really speaks to how
Hmm.
highly Michigan as a whole kind of views this game. So um, yeah, it's gonna be an interesting week. And but I did have another question though.
Okay.
Um, actually, this came from our podcast that we just recorded before I hopped on here. The running game for
Hmm.
for Oklahoma. 30 something carries for like 100 and something yards. Is that kind of a mixture of like, are you guys concerned about running? Are the running backs just not good, or is the offensive line not good, or is it a little bit of both, or like is there
Okay.
genuine concern about the rushing game?
There's genuine concern, and this is where it comes from. So Javante Barnes has been with Oklahoma now since 2022. His freshman year, he was an absolute dog.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, he's been injured, and he's just kind of lost his feel and understanding and vision for some odd reason. There was a play, drive two, second down. They're running a GT counter, and you don't know who the players are, but I'm going to say them anyways. Fabici, Weiwu, the right guard, the right
Mm-hmm.
tackle, Logan Hallen pulling, um, which is why they call it GT counter, guard, tackle, pulling counter. And for those that don't understand that, um, Hallen will Fabici Weiwu pins his guy, seals his guy inside. Fabici Way or Hallen seals his guy, but he's pushing out. So essentially, what's going to happen is there's going to be a hole between the guard and the tackle.
Mm-hmm.
It's not big, and it never is big, but it's big enough that you can slide through. And if you slide through, you usually got about 8 or 9 yards before you're meeting up with somebody, because that backside linebacker is the last person, or the safety coming down is the last man of defense there. Um, there was also a backside cut between the center and the left tackle who pinned down, which was Jacob Sexton at the time. So there were two holes. This dude runs outside where Logan Hallen is pushing the edge rusher. So what did the edge rusher do? He was playing sound defense. His outside shoulder was free. He just strung him out, tackled him. It was a
Mm-hmm.
shoestring tackle because Javante's not fast enough to get to the outside. That's never been who he is. That was a Gavin Sawchuk thing last year or the
Right.
years before, or the Taylor Tatum. Like that's what they did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he ran into the back of the offensive line numerous times. So they brought in a freshman, Torrey Blaylock, who, if you go look at the stats, he ran for like 5 yards a carry or something like that
Mm-hmm.
on like 7 carries. He was awesome. They brought in another guy, Xavier Robinson, did pretty well. Javante Barnes had 1 yard a carry on 8 carries. 1.3. That's where the 3.3 comes from. That's
Yeah.
where the bad running. If they would have played those two the whole game, Oklahoma probably runs for 170, 180 yards, and nobody's questioning they're this, or that, because they probably have 5.5 to 6 yards of carry.
Right.
That's not what happened. So yes, there is question marks. Taylor Tatum is 5-star running back. It's been hurt with a
Yep.
hamstring. Jaden Ott, who was the superstar transfer, the number one running back out of the portal, had 3 touches in the fourth quarter, and that was it. He'd been banged up with his shoulder all, and
Mm.
Venables in the first game, particularly against Illinois State, is big on rewarding the guys that made it through fall camp healthy and letting them
Sure.
play, which
Sure.
I understand. But now you have to rely on Ott, who didn't have that many carries
Yeah.
because obviously Blaylock is injured. We won't get into that on this, but yeah, it's a tough deal, man. Like, yes, Oklahoma's worried. They're worried about their offensive line. Jacob Sexton got hurt on the second series of the game. They don't know if he's going to be able to play. He's their starting left tackle. Michael Fasusi, the number one offensive tackle
Yep.
outside of Babalola, or
Yep.
they were both top.
Yep.
Uh,
I remember that name well.
yeah, so he had a problem during fall camp. Supposedly he's going to be back. One of the top right tackles out of the portal, Derek Simmons, out from Western Carolina, didn't play because he had a concussion. His
Mm.
backup didn't play, so Logan Howland played for ahead of both of them all game. Jake Taylor out of Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas. He's the backup right tackle. He didn't play. They both had concussion protocol over the last few weeks. They're hoping to have all those guys back. Heath Ozida didn't play. One of the other guards that they really rely on didn't play. So they were without like 4 guys. So they went from being really deep to not deep at all, like
Yeah.
snap
Yeah.
of a finger. So they're hoping they can go back to being deep for the Michigan. And a lot of people have said that this is what it's going to be. They were holding them out on purpose.
Sure.
So yes, there's a question for the run. Again, long story short, big question because you
Yeah.
don't know what's what on the offensive line.
Sure.
Though the offensive line is great at pass blocking, I will tip of the cap that they did well pass blocking. So we'll see. And Illinois State is not a, I mean, they're a top 5 FCS program. So I mean,
Mm.
those type of teams have upset many over the years.
Sure.
Michigan can attest.
Yeah.
App
No,
State
too
days.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I was.
don't
I
want to
was at.
overlook those FCS teams that are really good
I was
sometimes.
at that game as a kid. That was like one of my very first Michigan games. Like
Oh
that I
wow.
ever went to. So. Yeah. Man. Yeah. I know all too well.
So
Armani Edwards. I will
oh
never
yeah.
forget that name as long as I live.
Oh yeah. So gotta ask it because the OU fans are gonna want to know.
Sure.
You obviously have Michigan. I read it on your thing.
Yeah.
So, and that caused a hubbub on our site. I know you saw that too. Uh,
Oh, actually, I didn't.
yes,
Interesting.
it caused a
Okay.
hubbub on our site. Now the
Okay.
Michigan insiders picking them by double-digit points.
Yeah, you gotta stir the pot a little bit. That's what's life without kind of mixing
Yeah,
it up a bit. I can't go back on that now. I
yeah.
gotta ride it out. I can't go back on my
Stand
can't
on
go back on
business, man.
my
I
statement. Yeah,
respect.
and I'm not saying like the double digits is gonna be like 25 points or whatever. I mean, it might be like a 10 point win. I mean, it still counts as double digits. Yeah, maybe that was probably sipping on the Bryce Underwood Kool-Aid a little too much before the season started. But I mean, I think both teams are well equipped to go in there and beat each other soundly on
Yeah,
Saturday.
I agree.
This is not like a lopsided thing where someone's like, oh man, I think the fact that it's at in Norman, I think that plays into Oklahoma's favor. Michigan hasn't been great on the road on top 25 teams. They've fixed that a little bit. That's kind of a mindset thing. And
Hmm.
even last year, they weren't that great on the road outside of Columbus at the end of the year. So that's kind of one thing that they're hoping to see translate from Jim Harbaugh to Sharon is how do they play on the road, and especially against good teams. So, um, yeah, I mean, it's. I still obviously I have to go. I have to stick with the double digit prediction. I mean, it's I have to go with it. I think this will be a good game of defensive minds going at it. I mean, Brent Venables and Wink Martindale. I mean, if you're a fan of good defensive coordinators or defensive minds, You can't ask for a better one on Saturday. I mean, those are two OGs of individual schemes and all that stuff, and I think it's going to be awesome. I still think Michigan is can win, and obviously it's going to live and die on the arm of Bryce Underwood.
Yeah.
If they're really hoping to transcend this offense into another level, Bryce is going to have to perform in these big moments. And yeah, I mean, I'm really I'm really excited for this game
Yeah,
on
it's gonna
Saturday.
be fun.
This is these first 2 weeks or 3 weeks, really, if you can count week 0. I mean, it's been awesome, like awesome matchups and like against good teams and like historic teams. Like you really Oklahoma, Michigan, like week 2, like that's man, you can't get better than that right now. I mean, like it's awesome.
Is it a top 15 matchup
It's pretty
come Tuesday?
close.
Do you think it'll make it there by Tuesday with the upsets that have taken place?
Possibly. I mean, Michigan was 4th. Well, Oklahoma was 18th
Yeah,
heading into this game. Michigan was 14th. Yeah, I think it's very possible it could be a top 15 game,
I hope it
as it should
is.
as it should be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's game days there. It's the attention is there for the right reasons because it's going to be a good game.
Right.
I could totally see this being. It's funny because like I could totally see this being a shootout or a low scoring affair. I don't know. I don't think there's going to be any in between. It's either Mateer is going to throw for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns, or 250 and 2 touchdowns. I just don't feel like there's going to be any in between. Now, if Michigan can keep up with a shootout type of game, I don't know if they can do that. I just don't know if they're equipped offensively to do that. I think it'd be an incredible disappointment defensively if it was a shootout type of game. So um, I think if Michigan can get this game to where it's best at, the physical ground and pound type of like
Big Ten
smack.
game, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
if they can get that and turn it into a Big Ten game at someone else's house, I think the odds of them winning the game dramatically. I don't think they'll blow them out, but I mean, I just this has got the feel of like a classic, like a,
Hmm.
a classic one way or the other. It's going to be a game that people kind of point back to and be like, "Hey, remember this?" Because it's going to vault someone's season up or down. I mean, it's maybe you can make the argument that it'll vault or it'll like sink Oklahoma a little bit more than it would Sharon or in Michigan. But just because I know there's a little bit of angst like of where things are with Oklahoma with a couple of years into the Venables and kind of is this going to work? And I didn't hesitate to say that Oklahoma needs this more than Michigan does because that's kind of downplaying this game and what it means. But it almost does from like a narrative standpoint. It almost
Oh,
feels
you're
like
right.
Oklahoma
Hmm.
needs this game more than Michigan needs it. And again, I'm not saying that Michigan is walking into this game not caring and doesn't care about the outcome. Of course, they want to win, but just from like a fan media kind of talking point standpoint, like that, the questions will probably start to get a little louder on Oklahoma's side because you have a built-in excuse if you're Michigan. Oh, we got a young quarterback. Bryce is this is his second game. He'll be all right. This is
Yeah.
a good experience for him. So I feel like with the resources that Oklahoma's invested on the offensive side of the ball, I feel like, especially at quarterback and coordinator, I feel like this is a one that they got to have.
Yeah. So just real quick, I'll say this. If I will say on that note, the only way that it wouldn't kill BV or Oklahoma is if like they lost a close game, like a field goal
Yeah,
in the last second,
yeah,
something to that extent. Like if that was to happen, I think nationally they would be like, oh yeah, this Oklahoma team's actually probably pretty good
mm,
because this Michigan team's good because it's Michigan, right? Like it there's a lot to do with how it plays out. If they lose by double digits, like 10 points, yeah, people are going to look back and go, and maybe they don't. Maybe it's like 13 or 14. I think because I think 10 is kind of pushed on but I think if you lose by 10 or less, if you're Oklahoma, I think people look and go, you know what, there may be something to this Oklahoma team. They may be
yeah,
able to battle through this. However, if they lose by 13 or more, I think, yes, you're playing into the oh, this is going to be because then you've got Temple and then Jackson Arnold and Auburn come in to
yeah,
town, and that's not going to be easy. Oh, and by the way, you got Kent State, then Texas. And after
Yeah,
Texas, you got South Carolina, I believe South Carolina, then Ole Miss, then Missouri, then Alabama, then LSU. So or in Tennessee's in there somewhere. Like
sure.
it just avalanches on you after that. And you had the confidence of this team. I don't say it's going to dictate from what happens in this game, but I think how this game plays out, the
Mhm.
closeness of the game is going to be a significant like marker of which way
Oh yeah.
Oklahoma's season goes and
No,
BV's career,
Michigan's
unfortunately.
in the exact same spot. I think like from a fan angst meter standpoint, I mean, I don't think they'll be happy if they lost a close game, but if it's a close, well fought game that comes down to a field goal or whatever, I think you don't take moral victories, but you say, all right, well, they went into Oklahoma, they played well. You assume they played well, and they kept it competitive
Mm-hmm.
against the top probably 15 team. They probably should be top 15. Yeah, it's the exact same. It's like it's not the loss, it's how you lose.
Yeah.
um, in Michigan's path to winning 10 games this year definitely goes through Oklahoma. I mean, because they have to win one of, I think it's Oklahoma, Washington, Ohio State, obviously, and there's one more I can't really think of. USC, because they're at USC. If they can win one of those four, they're probably winning 10, like 9 to 10 games this year. So
Yeah.
it really, yeah, depending on what they look like on Saturday, I mean that kind of really sets your expectations to what things you think is next. Because yeah, in like 2 weeks they're heading to Nebraska, and then they have a trip to USC right after that. So I mean, it doesn't get easier. I mean, I can argue that Oklahoma has a far tougher schedule right now in terms of SEC than Michigan does, because they get Ohio State at home this year. So yeah, I mean the sledding gets tougher from this point on, and
Mm-hmm.
you'd like to capture as much momentum as you possibly can during the non-conference slate for sure.
Well, that's going to do it for this version of the inaugural version of the 2025 Behind Enemy Lines. I want to thank Josh Henschke from the Maize Blue review over at On Three, our brethren. Appreciate you, man, for coming on. This has been awesome. The OU fans are going to love this. So I really, really appreciate it. My name's Brandon Drum. You can check all our content over at ouinsider.com over on the On Three Network. Go ahead and tell everybody where they can check you out at like the .com and all that type of stuff.
Yeah. Excuse me. You can find us at maizenbluereview.com. It'll direct you to our site. Come stop by and say hi in the den in our community, where I think we're uniquely welcoming in this day and age of message board communities,
Yeah.
where some are very protective of their territory, but I feel like we're very welcoming to other fan bases that want to drop in and offer their non-trolling opinions, of course. But yeah, and you can also find me on Twitter at Josh Henschke as well, or
All right.
X. It's X, not Twitter.
Yeah, well, I still say Twitter. It'll forever be Twitter. Sorry, Elon.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's gonna do it. Appreciate everybody. For Josh Henschke, my name is Brandon Drum. We'll see you on Saturday.